Hey, fellow pastors, McKay here, and I want you to know it only takes a little hinge work to fix disjointed sermons. And you know what I mean by disjointed sermons. And part of the problem is that we tend to give too little attention to transitions. We treat them like filler rather than load-bearing hinges. And the deeper problem is that most of us learn to organize a sermon with points. First point, second point, third point. And that's great for organizing a lecture, an academic paper, or a legal case. But a sermon isn't merely a case to win or information to dispense. It is a redemptive story to experience. And typically, a main point doesn't really need what came before in order to make sense. And it doesn't really owe anything to what's going to come next. It's an independent point. In fact, you can preach three true, faithful, well-crafted points that actually could be three independent sermons. But a sermon really is different. Instead of isolated points, a sermon needs movement. It needs a narrative flow to it. And a movement doesn't stand alone because it isn't finished until it connects to the next movement. This is the engine of the PPGR framework that is built into Preach 360 in our sermon studio. Here's how you walk through it. Principle. This establishes the truth in the text that creates a demand to be addressed by the problem, because there's a tension there between the truth and now the problem, which is that it creates this need for resolution. We need a problem solved. And the gospel provides the hope that the response needs and that the problem requires. So you see how these movements work. There's truth, there's the flesh, there's the cross, and finally there's the spirit. That's the response, which describes the new life that couldn't possibly exist without the gospel, without the cross. So nothing here is independent. Everything is progress. It's like standing up a domino, several dominoes, 4, and having the first one pushed over. They all bump into the next. They need each other. This means that transitions aren't just filler. They really are load-bearing hinges. And when you unfold a passage like this with principle, problem, gospel, and response, these movements come with their own built-in hinges. For example, in this passage, we see and we state what is true in the principle. But then the principle is going to be a however, because now what we're doing is we're naming how we resist it. This is true, however, and then after resisting it, we're able to then pivot saying, but the good news is. And so we turn to what Jesus did in our place. And then once we are securely in union with Jesus, now in the view of the cross, where we open the door to spirit-empowered change. What I want you to see is that each hinge is doing theological work, not just logistical work. However, isn't a filler. It's the honest turn from what God says to why our hearts push back. But the good news isn't just a segue between points. It's the sermon pivoting theologically to substitution. And here's why this really matters. Your transitions are merely administrative. Moving to my third point, or something like that, then your people receive information. But when your transitions are part of a redemptive movement, then your people experience grace unfolding in real time. Even the structure and the transitions preach the gospel. Thankfully, it only takes a little hinge work to fix these disjointed sermons and turn your lecture into a sermon. Thanks so much for being here. I love to hear your feedback. My name is McKay, and I look forward to seeing you next time.